Thank you. Oh, I guess I'm not ready.
Right, take your time.
Yeah. Good evening. Here's the July 17th, 2023 Wolfeboro ZBA. I'm calling the hearing into session. Roll call, Audrey Klein, Chairman, Suzanne Ryan, Vice Chair. Sarah Silk is excused and recused tonight. Luke Freudenberg, Chuck Sumner, alternate Sabette Stroman, and alternate Kate McMahon.
Exactly.
Thank you. Does anybody have any changes to the agenda?
No.
Okay. So let's see. I have one item on the agenda for discussion first before we get going, and that is I want to ask the board about talking about scheduling a second scheduled meeting per month. And the main reason being the law has changed in August of last year to require findings of fact that must be turned in at the same time as the decision and the same time as the draft minutes, which is 5 days, 5 days after a decision. And I don't know how we can, in quite a few cases, hear a case, close a public hearing, discuss the case, make a decision, and then go through and list findings of fact. So my suggestion is that we set another standing hearing every month, a couple of weeks after the first hearing, so that in the first hearing we can hear the public input, ask all the questions we have of the applicant and the public. We can close the public hearing and continue it until 2 weeks later or so when we have the second hearing, at which point we can deliberate, make a decision, and then write the findings of fact. And this will put it off a little bit, but not as long as a whole month. And also, we won't be bumping into the next month when we have other cases and have a hard time doing this type of work. So I did do a quick bullet point from an NHMA handout about what the findings of fact are supposed to be. It says, a couple of things it says is the degree in which a local land use board should make detailed findings of fact in support of an approval may be based on the level of controversy associated with the application. If there is a level of controversy, the board should consult with their town council to prepare complete and legally sound findings of fact. So that 2-week period would also allow us to consult with the attorney if we should need to on any given case. In the findings of fact, the board should be clear with identifying how the application meets their regulation and checklist requirements for the findings of fact portion of the approval. Findings of fact should not replace conditions of approval. For denials, a local land use board should consider what are the things about the application that is preventing it from saying yes. These things should be anchored in the standards of the regulations and describe how the application does not meet the standards of the regulations, but may also include the exercise of independent judgment, experience, and knowledge of the area by the board. The findings of fact should be complete so that a court review knows your reasons, and the applicant has instructions if they want to try a second time. The board should always enlist their town council to aid in the issuance of findings of fact. Failure of the board, this is really important, failure of the board to make specific written findings of fact supporting a disapproval shall be grounds for automatic reversal and remand by the Superior Court upon appeal, unless other grounds exist for disapproval. We don't want anybody to have to go through that process just because we didn't take the time to do accurate findings of fact. So As it turns out, we have another hearing in 2 weeks anyway, July 31st. And then the August hearing is something like 7 days later on Monday. So I don't think we need a second. We don't, if we want to do this, we don't have to start it until mid-August at some regular date that we decide is okay, either the third Monday of the month or the third Thursday night of the month or whatever it is that works best for everybody.
Right.
So could I have a discussion?
Yeah, we have 90 days to make a decision from once the application was submitted. This one will be going right up against that 90 days. Is he picking me up?
Get closer.
Yeah, you need to get closer, like,
Oh, okay.
so that you're drowning yourself out, pretty much, seems like.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. We have by statute 90 days to make a decision. And this one that we'll be hearing this evening goes right up against that deadline. So yes, the July 31st meeting is critical that we attempt to do a decision that night and findings of fact. The applicant can be agreeable to an extension if we run into difficulties. But yes, to try and do findings of fact in the same evening, given that it's a new process to us, will be difficult. So I'm in favor of holding a second meeting.
And also, we may have more than one hearing in one night, so us trying to find our way through doing findings of fact at the end of the first hearing, when we have another hearing or two other hearings waiting to be heard, I think is going to be not work very well.
And a point of order, you have to appoint an alternate.
Yeah, I have that, but I was going to do it later, but you're right. If we're going to discuss and vote on this, I have to. Sabetta, it's your turn. Is there any reason that you wouldn't want to sit tonight as the alternate?
So if we have a second meeting for this one?
This is a second
case?
meeting.
No, but I mean, after discussing, if we do a findings of fact discussion after hearing the case again tonight, would that be within the next 2 weeks, or are we going to make the...
The July meeting that we've got
Could you
scheduled.
talk into your...
The July meeting that we have scheduled, what is it, the
31st?
There's
Monday, the
already-
31st.
So there's not another meeting between the 17th and the 31st?
No.
Then I'm okay.
Okay.
But the question was it
It was a scheduling question for her.
I had a
it sounds
scheduling
like.
issue, and so I didn't want to commit to being an alternate if Kate was available.
I see.
Right.
I mean, a seated member.
I mean, see, technically, we could think about this and vote on it July 31st, or even the first one in August, but I think we would like to start with that second meeting at mid-August and carry that through as long as we need to.
Yeah, we don't get to vote on findings of fact. We have to do that regardless. The idea of 2 meetings, I think as chairman, you just call that. You know, you call them, you call the meetings, and when we finish up with an application, we'll have a sense of whether we need to go to that second meeting, or if it's something simple that we could do that night.
I was hoping to do a regular one, because then we could use those nights for, work sessions, work sessions, or we could cancel them. But I think if we set
Okay,
if we set
I'm
a
good with
date,
that,
we
yeah,
can take it
yeah.
or leave it.
Okay, yep,
As
put it
need
right on
be.
the calendar then.
So does that require a vote? Probably, no?
No.
Okay. The third Monday night?
The only thing that's coming to my mind is the Conservation Commission. I know Sarah has concerns over those.
When are those meetings?
I would have to look. But I was going to interject, and I'm looking at Concom while doing this. I think one of the things the board might want to consider is whether you conclude a public hearing and then set deliberation and findings of fact for the second meeting, or whether you begin deliberate. I don't know where the statute lands on continuing deliberations or simply using the second meeting to do findings of fact.
So my preference would be that we have general discussion in the first meeting on the issues that we see so that we can then ask the applicant if we need two more things. But when we get to that point where we say, let's go through the criteria for this case, then at that point we close the public meeting and we take that to the next meeting, so that we're, we may come up with some new discussion while doing the criteria, but essentially everybody will have asked everything they need to, and we can move that part along pretty quickly.
So to answer your question, it appears that the Conservation Commission is meeting on the second Monday of each month. Now I'm just going back to the town calendar to see if anything is popping up on the third Monday.
This would also be helpful for those months that have Monday holidays that we have to cancel. We can still have the second meeting on the third Monday, instead of trying to reschedule every time we have a Monday holiday, which is like 4 times a year.
It appears the third Monday is clear, if that's a date you want to set or target for now.
So if there's not any other objection, I would like to schedule that for the third Monday in August, would be our next, the first of our repeated second meetings.
I like the idea. I also like to, I suggest that we make it optional, because some cases may be straightforward enough where we can settle everything promptly and agree on findings of fact all in one night. And then cancel the next meeting.
Yep, the less complicated cases probably.
So I would agree with scheduling the meetings, but leaving the option open to not use them.
It at least puts it on everybody's schedule and gets the room bookmarked.
Right,
So.
yep. And I agree with you, Chuck. There's a number of them that are pretty straightforward, and certainly once we get the hang of the findings of fact, when we're doing a sideline setback for a variance or something, it shouldn't be too hard to do that in the same evening.
Audrey, for clarification for the public, this will be a public meeting and recorded? People can watch it?
It's a public meeting and recorded.
Would be closing the public hearing.
But there's no discussion with the public, and the applicant doesn't have to come back with their attorney. In fact, the applicant doesn't have to be here at all.
So the clarification, just for staff, the second meeting would not be for any application, so it would be like the planning board. First hearing of the month, or the first meeting of the month is the only application receipt by the board. And second is, okay.
Yeah.
So yes, it would be public, obviously, because every meeting is public, and I would have to coordinate with the TV to see if they are able on the third Monday.
Okay.
Thanks. Keeping me honest. Okay, let's see.
So did you make a motion for the third Monday?
No, it's by consensus.
She says it's by consensus, and she's
I just
the
want to
vice
know if
chair,
I should
so-
book it tomorrow or not. So
Yeah,
sure,
yeah.
go. All right.
Let's move forward with that.
Okay.
I have a comment to make about the last hearing. So during the hearing last month, my counterpart, Luke Freudenberg, commented that he felt some of the questions asked of the applicant were way out of our purview, and questions about how people get their funds and what they get the profit out of the development is completely irrelevant to this, is what Luke's opinion is. And I think there might be some others who feel the same. So I'd like to say a word or two about why I ask so many questions. First, unless I'm assuming I know everything about everything, I don't know what the answer is going to be and whether it's relevant to what I'm looking at until I ask the question. Many times the answer doesn't come into my process when I'm deliberating, but I don't know that until I ask a question and get the answer. Secondly, new board members may also be interested in the same question, but not yet comfortable extending the conversation. And finally, I believe it's really important for the public to understand as much as possible about projects that are getting approved or denied by this board, especially projects that have a wide impact, such as commercial projects. So during the hearing last time, I learned a number of things about the housing project that may not influence the decision I make, but I think are important for me to know and are really important for the public to know as well. So that is just all, the only thing I have to say about that, Luke. And I appreciate your opinion, and I agree, I think there's 5 of us because everybody has an opinion. I just wanted to point out that I don't randomly ask questions. I really have a purpose for it.
Can I say something?
Sure.
So I was intrigued by your question or your point too, because for me, context is really important, especially as a newer member. But I did kind of think, well, maybe there's a point here where we go out of bounds. So I did some reading to try to better understand the purpose of context. And one of the things that I learned that's important is that context, sometimes the information that comes out can shape future laws, that things come up that make you look as a whole at what we're doing and say, not necessarily us, but the public, that could shape future planning laws and shape future zoning laws. So it really does sometimes bubble up useful information.
Interesting. Good point. Suze, do you have anything?
Ditto.
Okay. Chuck, comment? Kate? Okay. So let's see, where am I? I'm going to quickly talk about the order of business as it's part of just educating the public about the process here. We don't have a clerk tonight because Sarah's excused, so I guess one of us can read that back into the record. But it's a continued hearing in any case. So we would read the case, and then any board member that needed to recuse themselves on that case would say so. I would seat any alternates that need to be seated. In any case, a quorum of the board is 3 voting members, and a full board is 5 voting members. After seating any available alternates, if the board is not full, the applicant will generally be given the opportunity to continue the hearing to a time, place certain, or have their case heard with a short board, which thereafter cannot be used as a reason for a rehearing. Then we'll allow the applicant to present their case, and the board will ask questions to the applicant. And I'll invite the public to step up and speak either in favor or opposed, or just plain speak if they want. If you do come up to speak, please come to the microphone, identify yourself, your name, and that you live in Wolfeboro. Address all your comments and questions through the chair. Don't deliberate directly with other attendees in the room. Please contain your input to the criteria used by the board in evaluating applications. The ZBA is tasked with hearing 4 distinct appeal types, each with specific evaluation processes dictated by state law. So we really try to stay within those bounds, and we like to hear comment that goes to those points that we need to look at. We want to hear from you, and when possible, please refrain from extensively duplicating talking points that have already been made by other speakers. After hearing public comments, we will discuss matters between ourselves. If we have any questions, we'll ask the applicant more questions, then we'll close the public hearing, and at this point, we're going to continue those till the next meeting to deliberate, make a decision, and make the listing of findings of fact. So that is the process of the public hearing. And now I would ask the clerk to read the case, but would you like to read the case?
Sure.
Wonderful.
Public hearing for Laconia Area Community Land Trust, Lakes Region Community Developers, Beck Drive, Tax Map 175-20-1, Case 03SE, that's Special Exception 23, public hearing for special exception under Chapter 175, Section 72J, multifamily dwellings, and Chapter 175, Section 27.2 of the Wolfeboro Planning and Zoning Ordinance for a modification of a special exception granted in August of 2008, modified in 2009, to allow 30 affordable rental units in place of the 20 that were approved, continued from 6/26/23. And there was a site visit done at that location at the last, before the last meeting.
Yep, thank you. So this is an application for 2 special exceptions to 2 different sections of the zoning. And so a special exception is one of 4 processes the ZBA hears, and just a short paragraph on what a special exception is. And it's a specific permitted land use that is allowed when clearly defined criteria and conditions contained in the ordinance are met. Providing for special exceptions makes it possible to allow uses where they are reasonable in a uniform and controlled manner, but to prohibit them where the specific conditions cannot be met. Requirements in this sense are measured qualifications that are the same at all times and places and can be expressed in specific terms. All special exceptions shall be made in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance. So many people don't really recognize the difference between a special exception and a variance, and there's quite a bit of difference. So I'm just trying to define for everybody what this particular process is. So Sarah's already recused herself. I've already sat an alternate, so we have 5 people ready to continue to hear the case. And I want to just kind of recap where we left off last time. We had some questions about the status of the special exceptions that were approved before and the site plan that was approved before, whether, because we had the application was talking about the 2009 plan, we had a 2020 plan as part of the documents that were showing the area of project. And in addition, I noticed that there's a Conservation Commission decision in 2020. And so those are the 3 things that we were looking at when we received some guidance from our attorney. And basically, I think we're both on the same path. We're both going the same way. We just want to clarify what the processes are to make sure that we're going to be having this the correct way in the record file. And we believe that the current plan is not vested for the Phase 3, which really makes not much difference because you're applying for the things that would be unvested in any case, which are a special exception for the multifamily housing, an increase in the units, and the multifamily. So if there's anything else about not having that section vested that we need to talk about, then you can let us know. But I don't know specifically whether it makes any difference to the process at this point. And then I guess my second point, as I was looking at some of the previous paperwork, now you did the 2020, you had 3 applications in 2020 to the planning board. There was a site plan review, there was the condo conversion, and there was the conservation adjustment. 3 separate applications. You let us know that the site plan was not followed through on because the conditions couldn't be met, so that kind of went by the by. But what did the Conservation Commission plan that was approved, was that fully approved through all the steps, or did that also not get completed?
No, it was fully approved and actually registered by the state, at the state.
Okay, and then it was registered, I don't know what the conditions after were, but that was all met?
That's correct. And in the
Okay.
TRC, the representative of your wetland commission was there and had no issues whatsoever, because the boundary line we're working with for our new project is within the adjustment that was made. So we're not changing the parameters of where we're going to build.
So I guess my question for that is, when the Conservation Commission looked at the plan and approved it during that site plan process, they were looking at a different plan for a different reason. And if it was registered the way it was looked at, in my mind, I'm wondering whether that is, the change in the plan makes an effect on any new site plan going forward. And my feeling is that they probably should comment on it again.
I'm sorry, who should
The
comment?
Conservation Commission.
So by having a representative at the TRC and saying we have no concerns whatsoever
Is the
is not enough
Wetlands
of a...
Conservation
so-
Commission?
Yeah.
So we felt that that was why we had the TRC, was to
But the
flesh out any...
Conservation
big
Commission
issues.
is a whole board, right?
Yes.
Don't they look at things as a board?
Yes.
So one person at the TRC, is that how I don't know how they do their business.
I can't speak to that.
And
But
I don't know,
What
I'm
I can,
asking you,
what
but
I
I
can
don't know
say
if
is
you know.
what the
Just
process
comment. They
did.
just make a comment.
Yeah, but do they do the comment in front of the whole board, or does
No, just in front of the TRC.
one person?
Yeah.
So if they, and we don't have the TRC notes, but if we had some information from them that they didn't feel they needed to review this again, that would be fine. I just want to make sure that we don't step on any other board's toes when we make approvals that should have included something they should have looked at. Basically,
So, yeah, and the question I have is what configuration did they look at when you first asked to make an easement swap or whatever? It was like an
Fair
easement
comment.
swap. It wasn't a lot line adjustment, it was just a transfer of land amongst abutters.
It changed the shape
Exchange
that
of
we were going
land.
to build on.
And so, from what I understand, is that it had to do with you needed that configuration that you ended up with because of garages. And it was
part of it.
controversial amongst the Conservation Commission about whether or not they wanted to facilitate what you were requesting. And I would feel at ease knowing that they see this new plan and they're accepting it, or they find that there's no difference to them. But I also understand there was supposed to be a trail put in by the Lakes Region Coalition and maintained, and that hasn't been done. So they may have comment on this, and it would be nice to know where they stand on it.
and I'm assuming since this part of the site needs to be amended, go back to the planning board for a change in this part of the site plan. I don't know whether their process then also requires comment again or not from the Conservation Commission, but I would be most comfortable if that was the case, and I would like to have that happen, whether or not the planning board has a requirement for that.
I would certainly, I think we would be amenable to just you placing that as a condition of your approval.
Okay, that's
Because
great.
we're working within what the wetland swap, the process that was gone through delineated the boundaries whereby we could build with the proper setbacks.
Yeah, I don't
That
think.
hasn't changed.
Yeah, it's not a setback issue, and I don't know anything much about conservation regulations, but apparently it's pretty stringent because the agreement then goes to the Secretary of State. So I don't think there's an issue with wetland setbacks. It's just a matter of they increased the area of buildable area, they decreased the conservation area. That was all agreed on by everybody back in the day, but this is different. So as long as they give this a nod, then, I just want to make sure that we don't, again, I don't want to step on another board's toes because we forgot or didn't recognize that they had a part of the process that we should have, brought up.
Okay.
Speaking about, I think there was some angst about the language between whether this was an amended application or whether this was a new application. And finally, I think I got my head straightened out. The site plan's going to be amended because there's a new area that's changing. So it's all one lot, but part of it's being amended. But the special exception, having not been vested, in our opinion, is basically a new special exception. It's not an amended special exception. Does that make any difference? I don't see why, because you're going through the same process with both things. Or maybe it does make a difference. We'll find out here in a minute.
Hi, Megan Carrier. Nice to see you all again. So our position is that it doesn't make a difference. Regardless, we're still considering the same factors. So I think it really is kind of a distinction without a difference in this circumstance.
Right, that's great. And the language, I'd be more comfortable with saying this is a new special exception. This starts the 2-year, period. It's not an amended special exception, which doesn't make sense to me. So as long as you're in agreement that we can move forward, you're doing the same, you're going over the same requirements, then it's kind of a moot point.
If I could make a comment about the timing.
Timing?
About the timing. And
Sure.
this goes back to what the context and some of your questions last meeting. And that is that as we talked about, one of the key sources of funding for a affordable housing rental project only is the federal low-income housing tax credit program. And that's a once-a-year application process, which will be at the end of September. And that is why we started the board process and the TRC in early May. And we are scheduled for the planning board on August 1st and have submitted a set of detailed plans to them. So we are very much looking forward to working with you to answer all your questions and concerns, and would encourage you to make an approval with conditions if you feel necessary, such as a letter from the Conservation Commission, as an example, simply so we don't have to. So if you put a 2-year timeline on us, if we miss September, end of September, we're going to spend a year sitting on our hands, and Wolfeboro will have no housing. So I just want to make that's a piece of context.
Yes,
that is
thank you.
why we started this process almost 3 months ago. I know it doesn't
So
change
if,
very
I mean, in the schedule that I laid out earlier, if we meet to make the final decision and findings of fact on July 31st, that's pretty skin of the teeth. You know, I don't know why that wouldn't work. But if, I mean, would it matter if it were, you know, the week before? I mean, because technically
I don't think so. We have submitted for the planning board.
Okay.
Our application and significant amount of engineering detail, as you might imagine, is sent in. But obviously if it were a negative reply, that impacts the project, of course. But we will supply any additional documentation if you want a new application instead of a modification. If there's wording you want changed, we will make sure that that happens so that you can make that definitive ruling at the end of July.
My feeling is that wording can be just made in the approval language. I don't know how you feel about that. I don't think we need a different application from them, do you?
No, they ended up including both of the,
Right. But it's still called an amendment, but I think as long as our approval states that it's a, you know, it's a new special exception we're approving.
well,
I actually have another question because, you know, you just mentioned you have a fully engineered site plan for the planning board, and that in your paperwork you mentioned that you didn't believe there was going to be any significant changes to that. And I'm looking at your plan, and it's, you know, absolutely 2D. There's no grades on here, and I know the land is not flat.
Right.
So my question is, how far have you taken that site plan, and are you really comfortable that you don't need to go back to the planning board for something?
We are going back to the planning
I
board.
mean, after the first, I mean, any...
Well, if there's more, we could go to the September meeting. Again, we're charging forward. One of the first things the application process is going to look for, and it is a competitive situation. And
I'm aware of that.
So the first thing they're going to look for is, does the community want this? And that will be largely answered by whether the boards have approved that we're ready to go forward with funding. So that's kind of the context there. What you're looking at here is an updated rendering exactly as it's been presented in the, we colored it so it's easier to see, but to the point made at the last meeting about, well, what if things shift around, and that we would have no anticipation, obviously pending approval at the planning board, that what you have in front of you in a paper copy and what you see on this board is a finished submission. In fact, the buildings didn't move from what you saw 2 weeks ago. What did, you might consider, be more positive is the buildings actually take up a slightly smaller surface area within the confines of Land Unit C. So we've actually moved the tree line in a little bit from the 20 homes that were approved 3 years ago. But to the questions raised last time about, are we substantially far enough along such that something significant might change? At this point, it's submitted, and that's what you have in front of you as a site plan.
I have one more question. So, in the multifamily section, it talks about parking being behind the buildings. So is that something, how does that play into this plan and what the planning board is approving?
Sorry, when you're referring to the multifamily section, which section is that? There's a bunch of them that address multifamily, so I just wasn't sure.
It's the development standard, the development requirements for multifamily section.
175-43.
Thank you.
And 44.
143, 144?
Yeah. 144C, I think.
So I guess my question is, and I don't know the answer to this, this is a conservation subdivision also? Is it? I think.
I don't believe so.
It's not a conservation subdivision? Oh, so all this conserved land that we're talking about isn't part of the okay.
Outside the boundary. So none of the conservation wetland concerns are inside our boundary.
Well, my question was, did the conservation subdivision section supersede parking in the multifamily section if this is a conservation subdivision? And I don't know, because I don't know the site plan regulations
Well,
very
the only subdivision that occurred here was the condo subdivision. Everything else is really under the affordable housing section.
Well, unless it was a conservation subdivision originally.
But it's all in the same parcel. There was no subdivision other than removing the body shop from the major parcel.
So in a conservation subdivision, you just have land that's conserved.
In this case, the conservation subdivision wouldn't apply because they were only proposing 2 lots, and they agreed to put X amount in open space, i.e. conservation.
Okay, so it's not a conservation subdivision.
Correct.
So there's no way that anything in that section could supersede the parking in the multifamily section, as far as I can tell. I was...
To that same point, I did want to point out, because the question came up, Conservation Commission did receive a notice as an abutter. So
The Conservation Commission did?
Did receive, and there were no comments received.
Great.
Correct.
I'm Kevin Leonard from North Point Engineering, the civil engineer on the project.
Yes.
I just want to clarify a couple things just to sort that out a little bit. The original approval back in '09 was approved as a condo, a developed affordable housing project with 3 land units. There was no conservation easement. Years later, I can't tell you exactly when, but years later, Eastern Lake said, well, wouldn't it be nice, we got this extra land, right, that we're not using, it's outside the land unit C, part of the homeowners, basically the association of the larger tract, and they granted the conservation easement. Basically, it's something to do for the town, and had nothing to do with any approval associated with the rest of the development.
Okay, I had no idea, but I hear what you're saying. So it doesn't apply in any case.
So the second thing I wanted to clarify is when land unit C in 2020 was being redeveloped with a new concept.
2020?
There was the 3 applications that you were referring to in 2020.
2020.
The one application at that time was for a boundary line adjustment, basically adjusting the area of land unit C to make it larger, like you spoke about. And at that same time, they modified the conservation easement by trading some land and whatnot, which was a long, drawn-out process because the Attorney General needed to be involved. I think it took 6 months or something like that. There was a condo subdivision, third application, which was applying to the affordable housing development, which the affordable housing home project didn't happen, so that sort of becomes a moot point.
Right.
And the third was the site plan for the affordable housing home project, which also was not moving forward at this time.
Yep.
But I wanted to clarify the conservation easement for you, because that's sort of unrelated to the bigger picture.
Okay.
Okay, so just a couple things. On the parking, without looking at the ordinance, the other parking provisions in the ordinance, I can't say for sure. I'm happy to look into that. I mean, I'm thinking what this might mean is that where parking might not normally be permitted in the side and rear yards, it is in this context. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's prohibited where it is here. But without looking at the ordinance, I can't confirm that. I can try and pull it up in a minute here. And then there were just a couple of things I wanted to clarify. The question about how the plan that we've put up here doesn't show any contours. It's actually part of a 23-sheet set that was given to the planning board, and we just brought this one sheet for you guys. We didn't want to overwhelm with details that might not be relevant, but we did want you to know what the final layout was. And then the last comment I wanted to make, I know the trail was mentioned, and I have been informed that the trail actually has been approved. It was built last year, and that there was a dedication ceremony last June, so that is in place.
I saw that. I didn't know if it was the same trail that Suzanne was talking about. I did see that dedication in the paper.
Because they don't have the topographical and all that whole thing. All right. Well, this is the first time we've seen that, so.
Right. Yeah, the trail is actually not near Land Unit C. It's actually closer to Pine Hill Road.
So that's outlined in blue, the one on the left, is that your whole entire holdings?
That's correct.
And the whole entire holdings is how many acres?
From memory, I want to say 36.
I think it's somewhere around 34.
Okay, and
It could be 36.
out of the, I think it's 34 point something.
Agreed.
And out of that, you have 2 developed projects and one that's here before us tonight. Do you anticipate a 4th project?
No.
And I would think that's because of ledge and slope.
I would just say it's because this was designed as a 3-phase project. We were asking to go from the original 68 to a total of 78 units with the same number of bedrooms. And I do want to make sure that you all have a copy of the letter. That was the other concern. So I want to make sure you have a copy of the letter from the Sewer and Water Department.
Yes, we
Okay,
got
so
that.
we hopefully solved that question. But the short answer is no. And in fact, the vast majority of the remainder of the land is now in a conservation easement.
Conservation, land and open space. Okay. I think that answers most of my questions.
If I
That
could,
answers most of my questions.
I just wanted to add on, I think it's a relevant topic related to the parking, and that is we exceed the required number of spaces, which I think is beneficial to the residents here in terms of visitors. We have 59 spaces, and I believe the requirement is, 45.
Okay. Chuck, do you have any questions?
No, I think they've answered their questions pretty thoroughly.
Okay. Kate, do you have any questions? Can you bring your microphone up
Oh, yes, thanks.
really close?
No, I don't have any questions at the moment. Some of the things when I was going through the special exception criteria, wondered about stormwater drainage and some of those things, and it sounds as if those criteria have been met the first time and not changed. Is that correct?
So those criteria were all met in the plan approved in 2020 for the original 20 homes, and they are part of the submission to the planning board for August 1st. We're also have also applied for an alteration of terrain permit at the state.
Okay.
So there's a lot in motion at the moment, given our timeline.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I say?
Yes.
Yeah, I get the sense from when we did the site visit that the retention pond, the method of which the stormwater was going to travel has changed. And I thought there was some sort of a proposal to have a retention pond where you've got that open space, a smaller one, and then,
So in 2020, when we redesigned the home project in Land Unit C, which is the same Land Unit C that we're talking about today, we have a copy of that plan. I'm going to pull that up for you. This is You're looking at Land Unit C 2020 version, 20 affordable homes for sale. And that project got an alteration terrain permit. It also went through the full planning board process, and it met the stormwater regulations at the time the 2020 was approved. It also got an alteration terrain permit. Because we're modifying the design from what you see over there to the current proposal, we need a new alteration terrain permit. So we filed a comprehensive application back to DES with the current layout. And there's other things that sort of impact that, or the fire department wanted the access drive. So that actually increases the area disturbance on the property because we have to put in gravel access drive here. So we've gone back through and done a comprehensive analysis and stormwater management report and submitted that all to the planning board and to alteration of terrain. And they both rely, back then and the current design relies on a sort of a two-tier stormwater detention basin system. The basin in the lower left corner of the plan was a detention basin built in phase 1, but it was sized for the future phase 3. So it was always intended to take flow from phase 3, going back to the 09 approval. With the expansion of the limits of Land Unit C from the original 09 approval to the proposal today, we're impacting a little bit more land, and therefore the larger basin down below is a little bit undersized. So we're introducing the second basin, which is what we did in 2020, and we're redoing it again now. 2020 we had a basin there, and we basically, this is the inflow to it, this is the outlet structure to it, and it's raining over here like it did. So it's very much mirroring the old design.
it doesn't show up on this where you just put your finger. So down in here, you're going to have something here?
Yeah, here's one.
If it,
Oh, okay.
I have my grading plan with me, so let me just show you. So that is the grading plan that got submitted to the planning board, which has the detailed catch basins and pipe and...
Yeah, I don't need the detail. I just need a visual of where it's going to land on the ground. Okay.
Is there, well, the planning board's, going to, I'm not a traffic expert, but, so this is a two-way street, or is it one, it's two-way?
Yes, it is designed as a two-way, effectively a circular parking street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, this is a planning board thing. It's just hard to imagine cars doing this with all the people, bicycles, kids, and all that stuff going on there as well.
I understand on an 11 by 17 piece of paper, it's hard to gauge distances and measurements and size. But of course, it will meet all the requirements.
Were we able to pinpoint exactly where it said parking needed to be side or back? Because I know for sure that I saw that, and I put it in my notes, and now I can't find exactly where it is.
I think they're going to address it when they
You found
pin
it?
it down.
Yeah, it's 175, 144C1. It says parking areas and access ways are permitted within the side and rear yards. They shall be no closer than 10 feet to any property line and shall be screened from view of abutting properties.
I mean, I don't think they were anticipating this kind of development with that wording, but, I mean, I'm not even sure how you would go about doing that, but it's there.
Well, the wording says I'm permitted to park in my side yard. It doesn't say I have to put my parking in my side or my backyard.
Correct.
What is
No,
it- what
no
does it
parking
say?
is provided in the yard as defined by 175, 175.
I can't, can you read that again from the beginning?
No parking is provided in a required yard as defined by 175, 175. So yard is the distance between the property line and whether it's front, side, or rear. None of the parking is in those yards in this case.
I'm going to have to look at that. I can't really
What
get it
I
from
think
what
it's
you're
important to realize, this is a condominium development. The tract is the blue line on that plan. And so your setbacks are the offset off of the blue line on that plan. The land unit C is a development area in a larger tract of land well within the inside all building setbacks.
Correct, but the yard extends from the side, rear, or front property line to the first plane of the building, in which case all of this is interior to those, therefore not in a side, rear, or front yard.
I agree with that.
Can I? Yep.
I guess I probably would like to have that written out for me.
It's in the definitions of yard.
I know it is, but it's going to take me a while to get to it. What were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, before my counterpart says we're asking questions that are into the site plan and not relevant to us, I would say number 3 in our special exception requirements, that there will be no undue nuisance or serious hazard to pedestrians or vehicle traffic, including the location and design of access ways and off-street parking. So I'm not picking on it right now, but what I'm saying, we are within our purview for asking these questions.
Oh, I
don't need
no
an
issue with the
answer.
question.
I
No,
just
I
want-
wanted to point out something to you, that this design actually has a sidewalk that goes all the way around the perimeter of the area, where the prior design of 20 homes was designed with no sidewalk around the street. So I actually think we've enhanced
Yeah.
the walkability of this land unit C, even though we've added 10 units.
I think you told us that on the site walk. I think you mentioned that on the site walk. I'm just letting people know that we are within our purview of asking these types of questions.
So you were reading the one offline when you read that? Okay. So just sometimes mine isn't the same.
I don't believe the definition of yard has changed in 20 years.
I just pulled up the definition of yard, and the 175 defines it as any open space that lies between the principal building or group of buildings and the nearest lot line, and is unaccompanied by any structure unless specifically permitted, and is further defined as front yard, side yard, rear yard, and shorefront yard. So I think Tavis is correct that where the yard would be the areas between the buildings and the lot line. And here, all of the parking is interior. There's no parking between the buildings and the lot line. So there's no parking in areas of the yard where it's not permitted.
But to Suzanne's point, if the board believes that the change from the single-family orientation that's left, but the single-family orientation that had garages backing out, and it was a similar loop road, I think the board could evaluate whether the proposed is different or significantly different from the original single-family layout with regard to traffic and pedestrian safety.
When you say the original single family, what do you mean? The 2009 or this one?
The original 2009, the one that
Okay,
isn't
thank you.
quote-unquote vested anymore.
Which I don't know if they, well,
You see, it's down there. I know it's going to be tricky for,
that's not the 2009 one. That's the 2021.
either way, it's also approved. But the point is, all of these,
What did you say? Either way, what?
either way, it's a loop designed with all of the vehicles backing onto a road without a, what I'm trying to do is.
Okay, yeah.
I'm combining.
I'm not even going there at this point.
I think it just would have been a lot cleaner if we hadn't gotten into the 2020 plan. It just came with your straightforward proposal for Phase 3 as you wish it to be.
Yet, here we are. Any other comments? Luke?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
I have a question it's been answered in part. It may be in full, and I don't hear too well, so I might not have caught it all. But it has to ensure that it is going to be workforce housing or affordable housing. I really don't care for the word workforce housing. Affordable housing to me is a better term. But what criteria can you state for the record that is going to guarantee that this will be a project that is initially approved for and adheres to being affordable housing? I know you've addressed it, especially like when I asked you how do you make your money, but can you just say for the record what grants and how you're going to secure the funding and what that funding is going to be that will be to ensure that this project is for low and moderate income housing? Some broad statement.
So I think the first question was, are we effectively guaranteeing that it will be for affordable home? So if you're treating this as a new application at this point, we are not asking for any change to the commitment that was made in 2009, that 50% of Harriman Hill will be residents that are of very low and low income. That is part of the original approval, and we're not asking for any change to that. So that's number one. Number two, you have a defined term of what affordable nonprofit workforce housing is in your town definitions, which we will comply with. And funding is interesting. It's a puzzle. As was explained last time, the majority of the funding is hoped to come from the federal low-income housing tax credit program, which will have its own requirements as to the affordability levels, which essentially will mirror what is already been done in Harriman Hill 1 and 2, which I would say are your best reference point. I have not heard anything other than positive comments about not only the construction, but the management of Harriman Hill 1 and 2. And as was commented last time, there's already a waiting list of the 30 families that could potentially move into Harriman Hill Phase 3. So that commitment is there. The funding will require it. And again, different sources of funding might have little tweaks in it. But there is no change in our commitment that 50% of the residents of Harriman Hill will be of very low and low income.
Is not that permanent affordability in our zoning also? I thought it was.
Your 75-175 defines affordable nonprofit workforce housing as housing developments constructed or rehabilitated to be affordable for rent or purchase solely by individuals or households whose incomes are less than 120% of the area median household income, as published by the U.S. HUD for Carroll County. Developments must reserve a minimum of 50% of their units for low and very low income households as defined by the U.S. HUD. Affordable nonprofit workforce housing may include single-family dwellings, duplex dwellings, and multifamily dwellings. So we are mirroring your language. We're committed to the language, and Harriman Hill 1 and 2, I think, are the best representation of that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Anything else, board members?
All the questions I have, how about the public? Is there
Any public comment at this time from anybody here? Yes, there is. Hang on.
I'm just going to point out the letter that each of you have in front of you from Taylor, just for the record.
Thank you. Is that in the copies you gave, or just in the, okay.
Well, no, yeah, you have it in front of you. I made copies of minutes and the resubmit and the Taylor comment.
So you had a packet in front of you
Yeah, I got one
somewhere.
somewhere.
There's 2 extras over there, so.
Thank you.
Hi.
Good evening. Bonnie Medico, Chair of Eastern Lakes Region Housing Coalition. I live in Tuftonboro, sorry. But I'd like to read a letter of support from the Taylor community, if that's allowed. Thank you. It's from the President and CEO, Mr. Flaherty. Excuse me. Dear Zoning Board of Adjustment members, on behalf of Taylor community, I write today to express my strong support for Lakes Region community developers' application for a modification of special exception to allow for 30 affordable rental units at Harriman Hill Phase 3. Since 1988, Lakes Region Community Developers, formerly Laconia Area Community Land Trust, has developed high-quality affordable rental housing throughout the Lakes region. Their projects are well done, well managed, and much needed here in the Lakes region. We applaud their work in partnership with the Eastern Lakes Region Housing Coalition excuse me, that brought Harriman Hill Phases 1 and 2 to fruition, and look forward to the development of Phase 3. As a longtime Lakes Region organization employing 240 employees between our Laconia and Wolfeboro campuses, we understand that affordable housing is a critical component for businesses to attract and retain valuable employees. The people living in affordable housing in the Lakes region are valued members of the local labor force, including members of our team here at Taylor Community. They truly contribute to the success of the organization and many others many others in the Greater Lakes region. Simply stated, a strong local labor force makes everything work. In this difficult hiring climate, additional affordable housing is a vital piece of the puzzle for communities that are looking to support local businesses. We encourage the town of Wolfeboro to support any reasonable venture that will help improve the hiring landscape in Wolfeboro, and Harriman Hill Phase 3 most certainly fits that criteria. We wholeheartedly support the important work of the Lakes Region community developers and the Eastern Lakes Region Housing Coalition, and strongly encourage the Zoning Board to grant a special exception for Harriman Hill Phase 3. Sincerely, Michael Flaherty. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would you please give a copy of that to,
It's the same one you have.
okay, but Livy doesn't have it. Anybody else? Would anybody else like to speak? Okay. Board members, do you have any other questions for the applicant? Are we ready to close the public hearing?
I just think if you could list I forget. If you could just list the letters that we got for the record. I think one was Taylor Home. I don't know what I did with it.
She just read it and it's in the record.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It is going to be turned into the record. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And the applicant got us the requested letter from the
Public Works.
water and sewer, the water and sewer superintendent. That came into us, and it all computes that they have the reserved need will be met. What else did we get? We got a letter from the attorney, and we got a supplemental attachment to application for modification of special exception.
Right, but that's part of the application now, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, have you seen this before?
Yeah, it was sent to us by email.
Oh, all right, email, okay.
I did not see anything new in that except for there wasn't anything new in it.
Okay. Well, just so in the minutes it's reflected that we got these two documents, and they should be attached to the formal recorded set.
I have a quick question. It's just maybe for the public's interest, your timeline, assuming our approval, planning approval, grant approval for construction and endpoint, when it might actually be ready?
Well, it's sort of the $98,000 question on every development. So zoning, planning, application, alteration of terrain, application for funding. In fact, we'll be at the Selectmen's meeting Wednesday to ask for their support. They've already suggested they'll give the support, but we're going to apply for CDBG funding through the county with the support of the town for this project as well. So that's one example of the multiple things that have to happen. We would expect to get confirmation of these sorts of funding opportunities probably in the springtime, at which time you then go through a bid package and formal bid process. So exactly what the timeline of construction would be, I don't even want to hazard a guess, because that's going to depend on the contractor, right? We're going to.
So we're years out. I mean, we're years just.
Oh,
in
yes.
case anybody in the public is watching, like 3 years out or so?
That's probably a fair estimate, assuming the funding goes well.
Thanks.
No, good question.
I would ask, are you satisfied that the presentation given on the points, the 8 points for special exception, answered both 175-72J and 175-27-2? The multifamily and the affordable nonprofit?
I think, personally, I think all of the testimony together does answer that. I don't know that it's answered in the application.
Because I thought you had an issue with the multifamily portion.
No, my only issue was there was no separate listing of that section needing a special exception, and that those special exception criteria also apply to that, and some of the answers might be different. And so in the application, the answers are not different, but given the other information that's been supplied in testimony, I don't have any other questions about whether I can go through the special exception criteria for multifamily as well as the workforce housing. Do you?
Well, we're going to have to go through them.
Right.
So that would be my next question, is I don't have any further questions. And I think the person who gave the report on how the funding works and so forth, she was excellent. She did a nice job. And I think we've gotten just about everything that we need.
Would you like to motion to close the public hearing?
That's about what I was going to do.
Oh.
I'm going to make a motion to close the public hearing for the purposes of board deliberation.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. So now the question is, it's 10 past 8. Do we want to continue this until the 31st, or do we want to take a stab at going through the criteria and potentially making a decision and trying out our ability to make findings of fact?
I had anticipated doing that at our second meeting when we do the finding of facts.
Other opinions on whether We're prepared to do that?
Make a motion that we roll up our sleeves tonight and get this thing done. I mean, it's 8:10. If it takes us an hour, if it takes us 2 hours, we've been here later than 10 o'clock at night. I know there was a special meeting asked for on the 31st. Is that correct, Tavis? Yes. Okay. And I thought that special meeting was set up to address something else, but I'm sure this thing could be pushed into that too. I would personally like to see us try to get this done tonight.
I agree. I'd prefer to see what we can finish tonight. It's still early in the evening.
So that,
And so just help me again with how different it is to be very specific about finding of fact. We make sure we have a because after each one of the sections, is that right? Is there anything else?
that's, we don't know, but the most straightforward thing
I
for
thought
me
there was
is
a very specific kind of language, and that's
No, we
part of
have-
what was making it.
We have 8 criteria for a
Right.
special exception. You have 5 criteria for variance. Typically, that because thing goes with the variance.
Okay.
I mean, it's just a way to get you to the point of saying why
Okay.
it's met or not met.
Okay.
But I would be struggling to go through these 8 tonight and do a finding of fact. There's no way that I'm comfortable going to finding of fact tonight. And therefore, I would like to come, because I really feel we'll have to do the second meeting for finding of facts. That's critical, and we've not done one before. And so I would like the time in between now and then. You do have to whisper over there, Tavis.
Huh?
What are you discussing?
I was simply noting I was concerned that the board had closed the public hearing without being able to discern whether it had established the findings to be able to approve the case.
We close the public hearing and continue the meeting.
I'm not sure that's what Tavis was saying.
That's not what I was saying.
So, Chuck, did you have a question about that?
I have a suggestion. I mean, the findings of fact are something that we need to record with the case.
With a decision.
With a decision.
Yeah.
So prior to that, can't we go through each of the criteria for granting?
Can you speak up a
need
little bit?
A little bit louder
I
into
can't
your
hear you.
microphone.
Can we go through each of the 8 criteria for granting a special exception? Can we go through that, please? And then perhaps that, from the notes of this meeting, we can derive some findings of fact.
That's kind of a half measure that might work.
So can we do at least that much tonight?
So I would consider that the deliberation section.
Can we deliberate tonight? I guess, okay.
We don't use the 8 points as our finding of fact.
I don't think he was saying that.
Oh, that's,
He was saying that if we do the deliberation tonight, then next meeting, all we have to do is vote, and after deliberating, we can probably each come up with some facts that we believe are relevant. We can vote and have the findings of fact, and then not have to do the deliberation on the 31st. We will have done that tonight.
I think we use our time tonight to keep working and see where we land. I mean, is there any reason we can't get halfway through it and have less time? I mean, just
Nope.
see where we land? We've got another hour and a half technically in this meeting, right?
So it sounds like the balance is to move forward, at least of starting to go through the criteria for the special exception. And if we get to the end of we all say we got to the end of the list, we can then continue the meeting for findings of fact and a decision on the 31st.
all right,
Is that
I'm not clear on if, for example, we do site suitability, and I come up with 3 or 4 reasons why it is site suitable. That's going to apply to both criteria that they're requesting the special exception for.
So you're asking, let's do the 8 for each one.
Well, that's what I'm asking. And if I say, okay, site suitability, there's adequate space because. Is that answering both special exceptions they're asking for?
I think you have to say whether it is or not.
Oh, boy, that's why I want some more time.
So are you not ready to go through the 8 for each of those special exceptions?
No, I'm not. That's what I'm saying. That's why I would like the time to take this home, because I don't know which one applies to which when we go through those.
So why don't we do the 8 with one of them and do the 8 with the other?
But haven't we approved a whole lot of the...
Pull that closer to you.
Okay, sorry. We've looked at the, not I personally, but the first time this was approved, a whole lot of the criteria for special exception were already met.
In the other phases?
Yes.
That's right, but this is a
new
brand new one.
It is a new one. But it seems there are things that have not changed at all among the criteria that we wouldn't really need to spend a whole lot of time on those things, it seems to me.
I think what I'm trying to say is I'm not certain how to apply each to one for the multifamily and one for the, what was the other one, for affordable nonprofit.
Well, I'll tell you
I
what.
haven't worked through that in my mind
I
yet.
like the
Why
idea
don't
of
we just-
separating the two,
Yeah,
as you just said, Audrey.
Let's go through the criteria for just a special exception for the multifamily, and not for the multifamily, for the workforce, nonprofit workforce housing for a section 4A.
Are you ready to start off?
So I need to get to the list.
I'll
You want
I'll
to
withdraw the
start?
motion.
I mean, I might not say
I don't know if we were going to do a motion, we're just going to start
I
a
made a
motion.
motion and Chuck seconded, but I'll withdraw the
Oh,
motion.
I'm sorry, what was that?
That was a motion that we go through the case tonight,
Yeah,
but I made a motion and we roll up our sleeves and get it done. So I'll remove the motion. I got another question. Would the board consider meeting next week prior to the 30th meeting in order to get this done? 'Cause
Yes,
I
I'm
believe-
fine with that.
I had suggested
I'm good
that.
with that.
Okay, I believe the 30th meeting is set up for another case, but we're going to have a lot to do on that night if we have 2 meetings, so could we do another meeting next week?
Yeah, I'd just like some prep time,
yeah.
that's all.
I mean, I think we could, but I did think there was going to be enough time on the 31st, but I'm willing to do,
I'll do next
a
week.
separate meeting.
I'm fine with that.
I'm game.
But I also personally think I think we should at least go through one of these sets of criteria.
You know, to help me be ready for the next meeting, I would really, really appreciate going through one at least, so I get a sense of what's the difference between deliberating each one of these and then having a very clear findings of fact statement. I guess I'm not, since this is new, a new state
Because you go back
requirement.
to your ordinance for the findings of fact.
Okay.
Not the checklist criteria.
So we have to make sure we've got the correct ordinance related to each one.
Well, that's kind of not the way I see it.
Well,
So
see?
I see the cleanest finding of fact is a fact that is true whether you're approving or denying the project. For instance, we found that this third phase is not vested. That doesn't speak to whether we're going to approve or not approve the nonprofit workforce housing. That's just a fact. That's what we found. So that is like the cleanest fact there can be. It can apply to either situation. Now, there's, I think, lots of facts that are only going to apply to one or the other, but, and I don't know either because we haven't done it yet.
I think we need time, I'm sorry.
I don't think it's either or. I think we can be, I like Luke's idea of meeting this week.
Next week.
This coming, yeah.
Yeah.
But I also think we could use some time, right? We can't, you don't
I
feel
can't
comfortable
do
with
it.
that?
You're
Okay.
expecting too much.
I would like to do at least the nonprofit workforce housing criteria, because that paperwork we've had here from their application.
So now, wait a minute. All right, so this application is for the nonprofit housing. Where's the one that they submitted with all these criteria? Are they just saying we're using the same one for multifamily?
That's exactly what they're saying.
And yet I heard you say at the last meeting you felt that there was some subtle differences.
And I do, but I also said earlier tonight that the testimony, for me, I can take the testimony instead of what's only written on this paper and apply the testimony to these points for the multifamily housing.
Well, then I would like to take the minutes that has the testimony and collate that so that when we get to multifamily, I know
Okay,
where
does
we're
that
at.
mean is there any reason why we can't do the nonprofit workforce housing?
No, I'm game.
Okay,
I'm just going to mark this so I know what one I'm doing.
that's a good idea. Okay, so we're just working on 4A, nonprofit workforce housing, special exception criteria. So the first one would be site suitability, that the specific site is an appropriate location for the proposed use or structure. Is there adequate usable space?
The answer is yes, there is adequate space.
Does anybody say no? We're all in
Well,
agreement?
no, we got to put a reason. You don't just go yes, no, yes, no. The reason is,
There's 35 some odd acres and conservation area included.
that's where I was going to.
There's room for conservation area.
And
It just as a
Adequate
guide,
space.
that might help shape the findings of fact.
Right.
Because
Exactly.
you're saying it meets, and you just said why. That is literally the because.
but I'm trying to do that, okay? And
What were the very specific numbers? What was the size of the site, and what's the size of the building? If we're going to be specific.
Size of the
No.
building?
I mean, the site, I'm sorry.
no, we're not talking, see? We're talking about nonprofit. Does it meet
Right.
the nonprofit
We were talking about site suitability.
suitability?
Okay.
Adequate usable space. There's 34 acres for 60 units, is
Right.
that what you're asking?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, there's
Well-
34 acres. This project, this portion of the project is
30 units.
30 units on, where was it? Just said 3.5.
30 units on,
On 34 acres.
three point something acres.
3.82 acres.
Okay, 3 point what? 3 something.
3.82.
Well, there's adequate usable space because it meets the density requiremements.
And it has a surplus in the density department.
Surplus. I like it. Okay. Forget about Exhibit D.
Well, no, wait a minute. There's absence of environmental constraints.
I haven't gotten there yet.
Oh, okay, I thought you...
A2, adequate access. There's 2 entrances or exits, or 1 entrance and exit and 1 emergency entrance and exit, and that's adequate.
Yes. As well as it is a private road and not a town road. I think that needs to be noted. They have a signed document that they are not going to request the town to maintain it, so that's a plus.
But that doesn't have anything to do with whether the access is adequate.
Right.
Well,
Okay. 3, absence of environmental constraints. So the setbacks to wetlands have all been met.
they have stormwater drain plan that they've discussed with the retention pond.
Did we still have a question about the Conservation Commission and whether that should be a conditional approval?
Well, we get there,
haven't
we're not
gotten
there
to
yet.
conditions
Okay.
yet.
Okay.
Yeah. Stormwater plan appears adequate.
Adequate.
We're not. QUET.
The configuration of the project for Phase 3 is, I think it's an improvement over the one that they had.
So the 30 units is not taking up any more space than the original 20 units took.
Right.
Right.
Immediate neighborhood impact. The proposal is not detrimental, injurious, obnoxious, or offensive to abutting properties in particular and to the neighborhood in general. Typical negative impacts which would extend beyond the proposed site include excessive trip generation.
Well, let's take them one at a time.
That is it.
No,
That's
then
the
if-
first one.
Yeah, I
Excessive
said,
trip.
yeah, one
Yeah.
at a time, there's
Yep.
4 of them.
So because they meet the density, I don't see how the trip generation could be an issue.
Well,
The
and this,
propo- the 30 units are not projected to increase the generation of traffic.
Well, yeah, it
Anymore.
increases it by 10 units.
They gave us a traffic generation study that it's very minimal. The traffic study that they handed us
Traffic
is
study
almost
is de minimis.
non-negotiable, non-negligible.
De minimis. Okay. Noise and vibration.
I think the noise and vibration will be when they're building it, not when they're occupying the premises. It's a dead-end street.
They have adequate setback from the property lines and other properties in any case. The buffer around the whole development.
Conservation land around it. And I like the fact that it's a dead-end street. I happen to live on one and I love it.
Dust, glare, or heat doesn't really apply as if this is just a residential, just like any other residential neighborhood.
I put
I don't think C, D, or E apply, do they?
Well,
Smoke,
C,
fumes,
D, or-
I'd say
inappropriate
it's
hours of
NA.
You
operation.
mean 3, 4, don't tell me, we've got different numbers.
3.
3,
I got
4.
3. You're not using the,
Oh, I'm using this.
no, it's different than I'm using the application.
Yeah, inappropriate hours of operation. So some of these have to do with special exceptions that are businesses, and they just don't apply to a residential development.
I'd say 3 and 4 and NA.
5 is NA.
Well,
Inappropriate hours of
they're
operation?
not hours of operation
No.
as a business would be. There'll be no, it'll be interesting to see what the planning board puts on the hours of operation for when they're actually developing the site.
It's not applicable.
Yeah, that's not part of,
No, it's not. I just said it's a comment, a side comment. Be interesting, that's all.
so C, there will be no undue nuisance or serious hazard to pedestrian or vehicle traffic, including the location and design of access ways and off-street parking.
Which goes back to the fact that they're going to make sidewalks around the perimeter and interchangeable throughout the location of, there's going to be open green space, this common area that shows on the plan.
Well, I mean, I hope the planning board develops it a little bit more, like,
Well, see,
are there
now Chuck gave me the
crosswalks?
look for saying what I said, so you're making a side comment that I appreciate.
Well, it goes to the point. I mean, there's a sidewalk that goes around. Doesn't show any crosswalks to get over to the parking area, for instance, which those are all going to have to be there.
But there is adequate walking space, adequate walking area. There's adequate green space. There's common area.
I'm just reading C, so that doesn't include any of those.
And again, it's a private road, so there won't be like a town road that has a stream of traffic in and out. And again, it's a dead-end road.
And, I mean, this is not necessary, but perhaps it's an opportunity to also put in bike lanes
Right.
for safe biking. Be easy to add.
That was a pretty long conversation during the first 2 phases. We don't see everything on here because there does have to be,
Well, we got a verbal from them when they gave their presentation as to how they plan to
right.
present this to the planning board for the site plan. So I think what they've said is, we just heard it, they're planning to put sidewalks around there. So you can just say there's adequate walking space. They've got two access ways. One is the fire lane and the driveway that they've always had.
Yeah, actually, this new plan that was submitted tonight has more detail as far as getting to and from the parking areas, which is good.
And there's adequate, from what we can see, what we've been given, there's adequate parking that meets the standard.
Well, he said there was more parking than the standard, I believe.
Okay, so reasons?
Yes, we were told 59 spaces as opposed to 45 required.
More than required parking. There's sidewalks around.
Green space, I said green space and common space, which certainly is nice to have.
So on to D, availability of public services and facilities that the following services and facilities are available and adequate. Yes, we have a letter.
I would go right to that letter that we have. That
We have
answers
the
it
other
all.
letter. Okay.
Should we be specific about which letters?
When we get to the letter from Public Works indicating that there's enough, that it was figured into the sewer capacity that we have.
Yeah, thank you very much. We don't have to figure that. And
Stormwater drainage, which,
water, that didn't address water.
It's
He
the
only
same.
addressed, I thought he only addressed sewer.
well,
I thought the letter was to address
Yeah, but
capacity for sewer.
we don't have an issue with not having enough water.
Yeah, it's
Well,
town
that, I'm
water.
saying, we didn't answer
No,
that.
it does say, it says water
just
and
skipped
sewer.
over
It
it.
does, no, it does. Rod Dempsey wrote a
Thank you.
letter, and it said, Phase 3 can support water and sewer.
Oh, good,
For an
okay.
additional 30 units.
So ditto.
Yeah. 3, stormwater drainage, which they have engineered, and it was approved in the previous plan, and it's getting tweaked for this.
Well, it's changed a little. They're still going to
little bit.
have to go for an alteration terrain permit, and they will have to get approval for their stormwater drainage. But from what they presented to us, it appears that they meet the requirements.
Fire protection, we know they've got sprinklers.
Fire protection is good because the TRC commented that they wanted that
Thank you.
extra access way. And they are going to have their own fire suppression system. That needs to be noted, and there is a reason why.
Yep, got it. Police protection,
They were, the TRC was...
Same number of people.
Well, they were silent on it.
yeah.
TRC was silent. I have various opinions on that.
Tavis?
Tavis,
They weren't necessarily silent, but they did want a separate addressing system for Phase 3, so it just wasn't all Beck Drive, so there will
well,
be...
they didn't, we asked the question before, and we didn't have any comment, and someone asked why there was nothing there, and I think you said because they had no comment.
Correct. I'm just trying to share. The discussion at TRC was that this Phase 3 had a separate road name, if you will, for addressing purposes.
Now, for the police or both police and fire?
Well, it's effectively 911, but police is the one that made the comment. Fire
Okay.
was concerned
Well,
about
fire
the
made the comment that they wanted that other...
secondary
We got
egress.
that.
Secondary, yeah. Police didn't say that, fire did.
No, but the police suggested a separate addressing system for the back part. Okay, that was all they said. Streets,
The streets are previously approved, the town took the, is it Beck Drive up into the turnaround point?
no, we're talking about, aren't we talking about
And
these?
yeah, so I'm saying that basically the have a previously approved street and then a new access driveway will be privately owned and perpetually cared for. It will never become a public street. That's a big plus.
You actually think that that would stand up over time?
Well, it's done in other projects too, and
Okay.
it should be done more, my opinion.
Parks, the project does not implicate parks, but
No,
there's
but it's got,
recreation area.
but it does have the conservation, recreation trails in the area, and it does have open green space in the development.
Schools, not really are concerned with this.
Well, this proposal started out about 20 years ago, I guess, that it was supposed to be 55 and older, so we don't have any control over that. Hopefully.
So, I mean, we're adding more
Hopefully-
units, but not more bedrooms.
Well, but yeah, and hopefully there'll be more 1 and 2 bedrooms than 3 bedrooms. I didn't count them, and that.
Are you
were
suggesting
actually
that 1 and
more-
2 bedrooms don't have children?
Well, 1 bedroom is going to be hard to have 5 kids.
There, yeah, I don't think there's going to be.
Well, I do
very
remember
many
they said that
one-bedrooms.
they had more one-bedroom, it was like a surprise, I can't remember, I'm working from memory here, but a surprising number of one-bedroom units because there's a lot of demand for the one-bedroom units. So I think there might be less impact on the schools than you may originally, than we may think than there were with houses.
There's 4 one-bedrooms, 4 one-bedroom handicap, 13 two-bedrooms, 1 two-bedroom handicap, 7 three-bedrooms, and 1 three-bedroom handicap.
Okay, so that's
So.
families,
so
for sure, a lot of families.
I think.
But not that
But that-
different from 20 single-family dwellings.
Yeah.
So not really any change there from the original
yeah.
approval.
Well, it doesn't, and in fact, it might be an improvement because of the 1 and 2 bedroom
Yeah,
units.
I just have to say, if you're assuming that less children is an improvement, yes, that's true. But let's not have that argument.
I'm thinking about the school.
Right. Our big, beautiful, new school. Okay, sorry.
Are you on E?
Oh my, I've got another copy.
E1, parking scheme.
E. You go because I'm lost. Oh,
Okay.
no, here I am, yeah.
Well, it's, requires 1 space per unit plus 1 for visitor, so
So they have more than
they
required.
have more than required. 52 spaces are proposed to provide some surplus parking to accommodate, so they got more than required. Traffic circulation, I haven't heard too much about that, except we just
I don't
talked
like
about,
it.
we just talked about a dead-end street, a one-way street, but they're saying it will be a two-way circulation, similar to the traffic plan previously approved.
Okay.
We didn't spend a lot of time on that.
Can I go back to parking scheme for a minute? Because I am haunted by something that I swear I saw somewhere that said, because I took it straight off, parking must also be side, must be side or rear.
Address that's
Oh,
not there.
one, I'm looking at my, parking also must be side or rear yard, not front yard.
Must be, or,
I swear I got that somewhere. I mean, I literally
I
copied
thought
and
I read
pasted.
it, that's what I read too,
I
yet we
copied and
just,
pasted it, and it's right here.
we
And I-
just read
what
it, and that's
numbers?
not what it says.
I know. I went back through and I couldn't find, I put the number that I had. I mean, so
That's bizarre.
I
read it too.
You did read it too.
and
So I
then
think we
know
have
she
different
read
versions
something
of the
different
zoning
about it.
ordinance, and at some point, it got changed. This is the one online, which frankly, I don't trust that either, but are you saying that the,
That's what the town goes by, so.
well, I hope the town goes by the right one.
Is this related to the parking?
Yeah.
And it's,
This says parking areas and access ways are permitted within the side and rear yards, not required to be.
okay. I mean, I don't,
I know.
I couldn't find
Three
it.
of us read the other thing, and we don't know where.
So we don't need to have any kind of.
Right.
Not any, okay.
So we were on traffic circulation.
Similar to the other previous approved.
open space. Number 3, open space. I think
So
where are
isn't
you?
this,
Are you on?
considerations of site plan, wasn't this the first thing we did here?
The first one was
Site suitability.
site suitability.
Oh, okay.
That's different. This is specific to
All right,
open space, and the plan, our colored plan shows that there's open space, adequate and more than adequate open space, and
it
green space.
Yeah.
Again, it goes back to the 3 point whatever acres, of which not all of it's going to be covered with buildings and pavement. So yes.
okay. Fencing and screening.
I'd say that's just for the dumpster and stuff, but I'd say other than that, it's not terribly applicable.
Dumpster is screened.
Landscaping, that's up to site plan.
And we have it on here anyway. We see trees on here.
And 6, signage. There's not going to be any signs that are going to be any different.
Well, there would be signs on the buildings, probably, of the building,
That's-
but assumption
There'd be a
here, no
number.
neon.
There'll be a number to the unit.
Right.
You know, each unit.
Regular required
But-
signage.
But it's
Right.
each unit will have a number, but other than that, I don't think it's terribly applicable to us.
Commercial vehicles no more than in any other residential neighborhood,
Correct.
right?
Right.
Yeah. And 8, lighting impact, and that's a hot button issue as of late.
Yeah.
But they will have to follow the dark sky ordinance. And that will come up under site plan. I know for sure the planning board will nail that one. And then F, immediate neighborhood integrity, that the historical use and established use patterns be weighed with recent change and trends in the neighborhood. Well, I'd say that this trend is coming to fruition, and the trend in that neighborhood is exactly what they're asking for.
Yep.
Rental units. Affordable rental.
Multifamily.
Affordable rental units, multifamily. Yes, they meet that one.
Okay. Impact on property values.
It shouldn't have any.
Again, they've got a big buffer to any other adjoining properties, so I don't see how they could have any impact on the cost or the value of property.
No, and we've heard testimony from, I don't know the lady's name, but there was a lady who championed this sort of development, and that it was good for the neighborhood and good for the town.
It is consistent with the spirit of the master plan.
Yes.
Yes.
By providing income-restricted housing and rental units both.
And in fact, well, we're not necessarily referring back to the previous plan, but now we have 30 units instead of 20 houses. So while there are pros and cons of housing versus owning versus renting, we're probably going to be able to support more people with housing, right?
More households.
Well,
More
I
households.
think one of the things I like about this is that we're getting closer to what the state or some people would like to say in the state, that each town have its quota. I think that this goes a long way to meeting that quota.
So as far as that goes, I mean, I am really disappointed that they are not able to offer a home ownership
Oh, I am too.
number.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of disappointed that the market research was done in 2019, which is a new world now. and it's totally different. And also, the pricing for the units that are being built were asked for between 2020 and 2022, when things were nuts. Having said that, also, I think perhaps people that were looking for garages might be more desperate now and less needing of garages. However, I think the climate is still extremely challenging for single-family dwellings, regardless of the fact that those things have kind of backed off in the last year.
Let's look at it this way. Let's be optimistic about independently owned affordable housing. By the time they get this through, by the time they're ready to put a bulldozer into the ground, the market could swing around again, and they might come in for another change. How many changes have we had since the inception of Harriman Hill? So who's to say they won't be back?
I would just say I agree and disagree with you a little bit, Audrey. I mean, I do think it's important that we have affordable homes that are affordable for people to buy so that they are building equity long-term. That's really critical, and I hope that somebody else picks this up. In fact, if there's extra acreage in this, it would be awfully nice if you ever came back and you saw an opportunity to have a phase 4. I mean, I don't know that there is or isn't, but because I think houses, it is really important, but I don't think the cost of building, I mean, it was awful in 2019 and during COVID, and I'm not sure it's come back that much that I trust I really do trust that their numbers that are prohibitive right now are probably still prohibitive.
I tend to agree with you, but let me make one more point, is even if they were able to make affordable housing purchases, and the big purpose being so that people can build equity and move up, this is a perpetually restricted market here. So people would get a history of paying their mortgage, and they would get those good things, but their increase in value for their home is not going to be like the general market. So
we can have this debate.
This is not a debate.
It's not a debate. We can have this discussion, but the fact of the matter is that's not what's before us. And maybe the things will change and we'll see something like that again.
So my point was, I was giving a perspective on my thought that even if this were home ownership, people don't get to build equity like they would in a regular market. And that's just a
And you said that at the hearing. So,
I did?
Yes, you did, about equity, and I agreed. So let's move on. I think we've gone through the 8 points, and you've taken notes, so I'd like to make a motion to approve the application for Eastern Lakes Regional Housing, case 03 SC 23, special exception under section 175-27.2. Check me on that, make sure I've got the right one. I believe I do.
Yes.
Second.
No, wait a minute. Now, there may be conditions here, so hold on. Wait a minute, hold on.
Is there any chance that we should have a condition about the parking, since we do have somewhere, I mean, does it hurt anything to say we would like there to be a condition that the planning board?
No, I don't think that's within our ability to require anything that's not in the zoning.
Okay.
No, the parking-
All right,
Okay, never mind.
I have some conditions here.
What do you got?
I'm trying to find them, right here.
I want to make a condition, I can send you this since I wrote it, but the applicant shall, within 30 days of the date of this conditional approval, request written comment from the Wolfeboro Conservation Commission to the ZBA regarding the current proposed plan, which proposes an increased development area footprint and correspondingly decreasing conservation area from the 2009 plan, and shall file proof of such request with the planning office. I guess that's...
Okay, then
that's
I've got This approval.
Hang on. Yes?
I have a question.
Yep.
What if?
What?
If,
So Conservation Commission says, no concerns, thank you for requesting our input, that's fine. But if they say, holy cow, we didn't understand this was happening, what do you want to happen?
we don't, whatever it is that their process is, I don't know what it is. Whatever it is that they're,
But officially, they don't have a process because they only make recommendations.
and that's fine then.
Well, no, but what I'm wondering is, do you want the applicant to come back and address concerns if raised by Concom? Does that affect the
Not to
special
us,
exception?
no.
Okay.
More of a courtesy.
I'm just trying to figure out
Right.
where the comments go if they don't come back here.
I would
as your
assume they would
condition.
go to the planning board, since that's the original requirement of that comment is at the site plan hearing.
Okay, so within 30 days, applicant shall request comments of the changes from 2009 to current plan of
I will
Conservation
send you the
Commission.
language, but the purpose is to give them a heads up, give them an opportunity to comment to the planning board, and we would just like proof that they've done that.
No, I just didn't hear that in the
Okay.
condition was to go to the planning board, that's all.
All right, I will send you that language.
So, did you take that wording from this
Yes.
exactly? Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's a condition precedent.
Yes.
All right, and I have another one. This approval will not become final until all of the following conditions precedent have been satisfied. That should go at the top of all these conditions. The applicant shall apply for and obtain final site plan approval from the planning board for the redesign of phase, I can give you this right after, phase 3, and the approved site plan shall be recorded at the registry of deeds. Should that final approval site plan not comply with the plan's terms or conditions that are the subject of this conditional approval, the conditional approval will not become final, and the applicant will be required to seek an amendment to this conditional approval to bring it into conformance with the final approved site plan. That's the second one I had.
So this basically speaks to
You're on the
their statement that they weren't going to make any substantial changes.
Okay.
And if they do make substantial changes, they, I think, recognize they have to come back anyway.
And they're on
And
the
then-
calendar.
then we
Planning board,
have-
aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then we have the boilerplate ones. One, all federal, state, and local permits to be received, including but not limited to the town of Wolfeboro building permit approval. 2, all of the documentation submitted in this application package as of May 11th, 2023 by the applicant, and only requirement imposed by other agencies are part of this approval unless otherwise updated, revised, clarified in some manner, or superseded in full or in part. In the case of conflicting information between documents, the most recent document and its notice herein shall generally be determining. 3, the application as submitted to the ZBA does not satisfy the submittal requirements for a building permit. 4, the notice of decision shall be recorded at the Carroll County Registry of Deeds, and the applicant shall be responsible for the payment of all recording fees. And the 5th one that I didn't write down, and we have used, Tavis, you've got it because you've used it on ours before, the one about the, this approval is good for 2 years in accordance with that statute.
Okay.
I can't remember the number.
No,
You know what I mean.
I do.
Okay, so that would be 4, 5, 6, is that about 7 conditions?
Yes.
It's either 6 or 7.
Why is that date there when they've submitted later things?
Well, that wording takes care of that.
Okay.
This is the date that it's submitted.
Oh.
And the wording takes care of supplemental. So there, now, the motion was to approve with those, I believe, 6 or 7, 5?
6.
6 conditions. And I named off the case number, I named off the party, I didn't put the tax map. No big deal?
No, typically what it says is, board made a motion to approve the
Yeah.
application as submitted, subject to the following conditions, and there would be the 6. And then after your next meeting, or after this meeting, if you enumerate the findings of fact, those will be just before the conditions.
Okay, now a second.
I still second it.
All in favor?
Roll call.
Roll call. Luke?
Yes.
Sabette?
Yes.
Suzanne, yes.
Audrey, yes. Oh, that's right.
Chuck, yes.
Chuck? Okay. Approved for that.
Yeah.
Now,
Now, can we do the second half of this in a week, like suggested, because it
Well,
is different.
Where are the differences? Can we just cite the differences?
It's different.
Yeah, I think that's a good question.
It's a different,
Well, the criteria are the same.
it's 9 o'clock, I'm not ready to start going through it.
so all I can say, and I don't know the answer to this, but the criteria are the same for every case, but
The reasons are different.
every case has different
It's
components.
a different scenario, yes.
So whether those components end up being exactly the same for these two or not, frankly, I don't know. We'd have to go through them to be able to say yes or no.
Is there any chance we could do it this week while it's really fresh in our mind?
Let's take a look at our schedules and determine it.
And then it's quicker for
Is
them
there
as well.
room available for us next week?
This week?
I don't know that. The only room I know I can speak to with any certainty, loosely using the term certainty, is this room. I can't speak to any other room in the building.
So is this?
I'm sure it's possible to come up with a room for at least the board.
So I guess the question, Luke, do you have any open evenings the rest of this week?
So I have a selectmen's meeting Wednesday. I believe we have police commission Thursday, but other than the selectmen's meeting, I can miss any of those.
I mean, as far as this room is concerned, tomorrow, anytime between 10 and 6
I can
really is
go home and
fine.
study this tonight.
Wednesday, this room is pretty much booked from 5 o'clock on. Thursday and Friday have some openings.
Thursday and Friday, what?
Appear wide open for this room.
So what time Thursday, like early, can you do late afternoon or sometime that doesn't interfere with your other meeting, Luke?
Yes.
What time?
Thursday, I would be available after 4:45.
So we could say 5 o'clock Thursday?
I can do that.
5 o'clock 5 o'clock Thursday? Huh? Okay, well, you don't have to be here, so you can catch up on the recording. if we
Suzanne,
get
does that
recorded.
give you the time you need?
That can do it.
Yeah. So 5 o'clock Thursday, the 20th?
Yes.
In this room?
In this room?
That's the calendar I'm looking
Oh,
at.
okay.
You just have to tell me what room, and we'll put a
Thursday,
notice up for your meeting.
20th.
So we're doing, make a motion to continue this hearing to a meeting of Thursday, the 20th, at 5 o'clock, somewhere in the town hall.
Second.
If you want it here, we can do here. I just have to put a notice out that you're having a
Right.
meeting on the,
And do you know whether we would be able to have the community TV going?
I can't, without.
Don't know?
Without
Okay.
talking to them, I don't know.
So it was a second, a motion and a second?
I heard a motion, I don't know who seconded it.
Luke seconded it.
Yes.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
that's 5. Thank you. Thank you.
Minutes postpone or adjourn?
Those are very detailed minutes, which I really appreciate, but I'd like to have the chance to read them. I don't think I could look at them right. Are you talking about approving the minutes that she just handed out?
Well, they were sent out end of last week, but yes, this is the
Oh, I
first
didn't
hard
look at an
copy.
email version of them, so I can't approve them right now without reading them, and they're very detailed.
Well, you weren't sitting,
No, I don't think so.
you don't get to vote.
So I don't count. Okay.
So, I mean,
I would make a motion to approve the minutes of June 26, 23.
yeah, I just want to say, I really like the way the bullet minutes are done.
I think they're great.
Yeah, the
Okay.
minutes are great,
Minutes are great.
very detailed.
So I would second the approval of June 26 minutes. You mean you would like some? You can have mine. Yeah.
Yeah, where'd they go? I've lost mine, too.
Call the vote. So it was all in favor of approving June 26th?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Let's see, are there any others? You can have that. I don't need it now. Yeah.
If they are, I can't find them right now.
I have a bunch, but I don't know which ones are
What, the
relevant.
minutes?
April ones, April 3rd.
There might be some over here. There were, she handed them out. Here's the minutes. For Kate?
That's one we just did.
Oh, I thought that's what Kate was asking for.
I just gave her mine.
26.
Oh,
We have a June 5th.
Did I look at those?
These are the revised draft minutes with the lighting on them, I believe.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And so that's been amended to add the discussion by the cooks.
Yes.
Then I make a motion to approve the amended minutes of June 5th, 2023 as amended.
As, yeah, revised.
Second?
Second?
Second? We got a
Second.
second?
Yeah.
We got a second.
Right, because you weren't, I don't think we had any. So anyway, there was a first and a second for the 5th.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You can have this one, too.
Okay, majority approved. I would then make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
You want this public? What? Before we adjourn?
But it was just a question from the applicant. They're not sure if they need to be present for the
No, they don't.
7:20.
No.
She said at the beginning of this that they don't need to be present. We'll be
Well,
doing this.
agreed, because there's no more public comment. I was wondering if the board had any problem with it being available through Zoom for their benefit.
Not at all. Oh, you mean having Zoom? They can watch on,
If it's not on TV, is it okay?
Yes,
if-
that's-
okay,
I
okay.
think that would be fine.
I didn't want to surprise somebody with that.
yeah, gotcha. Well, normally I wouldn't, actually, if it's on Zoom, we have to make that available to everybody, I think, the general public, not just the
Well,
applicant.
that's fine. I'm not sure. That's fine. It would be available. We could make it available.
Yeah, then that's fine if we do it that way.
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah, I seconded.
We got a second.
Yeah.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Of what?
Aye.
Disbanding? Aye.
Thank you, Suzanne,
Thank you, Suzanne.
for doing that one.